Something is about to land for you, not approach, not begin, not inch its way gradually into view over some vague, unspecified future horizon. Land, the specific, sudden, felt in the body quality of something arriving after a very long time in transit, the way a package feels different when you have been waiting for it for months rather than days, when you have almost stopped expecting it, when you have quietly made a kind of peace with the possibility that it may not come at all, and then it does. That is the energy I opened into the moment I sat down with your spread today, Virgo, and I want you to let it reach you fully before we go any further. Not because I want to generate excitement for its own sake, because what the cards showed me today is specific enough and significant enough that it deserves to be received from a place of genuine stillness rather than being absorbed too quickly and moved past. I know you have been patient. I know patience is not even the right word for it anymore, because patience implies a kind of active, graceful acceptance of waiting, and what I am sensing in your energy is something considerably further along than that. Something more like the particular exhaustion of someone who has been doing everything right for a very long time and who has watched time pass and circumstances shift and other people seem to receive things more quickly or more easily and has continued anyway, continued working, continued showing up, continued maintaining their standard even on the days when maintaining that standard felt almost arbitrary given the evidence of what it had produced so far. That continuation is about to be accounted for. Let me speak to what I felt the moment this energy opened before I describe a single card, because the initial impression carries real signal today. I felt fullness. Not the fullness of something that has just arrived and is still being unpacked, but the fullness of something that has been accumulating quietly for a long time in a space that was not yet ready to receive it, and that has now reached the point where the space is ready and the accumulation tips over into actual arrival, like a reservoir that has been filling slowly, invisibly, underground, and has finally reached the waterline. I also felt something I can only describe as alignment, the specific energetic quality of things that have been moving toward each other from different directions, finally arriving at the same point simultaneously, the sensation of gears engaging after a long period of turning without quite catching. And underneath both of those things, something more personal and more tender than either of them. I felt you, the specific quality of someone who has had to hold on to something quietly, without much external confirmation that it was real, without much visible evidence that it was building toward anything, and who has done so anyway, simply because they could not do otherwise. Because something in you has always known, has always sensed that there was more coming. Even when the visible evidence pointed stubbornly in the opposite direction, that knowing is about to be vindicated, not gently, tenfold. The first card in this reading arrived in the position representing what has been quietly building beneath the surface of your visible life, what has been accumulating in the invisible space between where you are and where you are going. And it is a card I want to describe slowly because its imagery carries layers that are all relevant here. This card shows a figure dancing in a laurel wreath surrounded by 4 emblems representing the fullness of all possible experience, with 2 figures in the corners of the image offering witness to what is being completed. The card sits at the very end of the major arcane sequence, which places it at a position of absolute completion, of a cycle that has been running for a long time, finally, fully, comprehensively arriving at its conclusion. What I want you to understand about this card appearing in this position is that it is not describing a small or provisional completion. It is describing the completion of something structural, something that has been the organizing context of a significant portion of your life. The cycle that is completing is not one chapter of your story. It is a full arc. Something that began, moved through all of its necessary phases, including the difficult ones, and is now arriving at the wholeness that was always its destination. I also want to speak to the dancing figure at the center of this card because the posture is important. This is not someone who has arrived at their destination and collapsed in relief. This is someone moving within their arrival, inhabited fully by the completion of something, experiencing the wholeness of it as an active, embodied state rather than a passive one. I am sensing this is how it is going to feel when it arrives for you. Not like sitting down after a long walk, like being fully inside a moment that you have been walking toward for a very long time and discovering that the moment is even more alive than the walking was. I also want to address the four figures at the corners of this card because in traditional readings they represent the fullness of all possible realms of experience, the complete range of what a human life can contain. Their presence surrounding the central figure tells me something specific about the nature of what is completing for you. This is not a partial completion, a resolution of one area while others remain unaddressed. What is completing is something that touches multiple dimensions of your life simultaneously, a wholeness that arrives across more fronts than just one. I want you to hold that in mind as the next weeks and months unfold, because the arrivals may come from different directions and not all at exactly the same moment, and recognizing them as parts of a single completion rather than disconnected individual events will help you receive the full magnitude of what is actually occurring. The second card appeared in the position of what is specifically incoming, what is moving towards you in real, material, daily life terms. And I want to be specific rather than vague here because the energy is specific. This card shows a single hand emerging from a cloud, holding a pentacle, a golden disc, a solid, material, tangible thing, against a sky of impossible richness, with lush earth below and more abundance in every direction. This is the card of new material beginning, of something concrete and real arriving in the physical plane of your life. It is the beginning of its suit, which means what is approaching is not a continuation or an iteration of something already present. It is genuinely, structurally new. I am sensing that what is incoming for you carries a quality of solidity that you have not always had access to in this particular area. Things that were precarious becoming stable, things that were theoretical becoming actual, things that you have wanted and worked toward and occasionally allowed yourself to hope for but have perhaps not fully permitted yourself to count on because experience has taught you to be careful about counting on things before they are fully in hand. I want to invite you to begin loosening that caution slightly, not abandoning it entirely, because your caution is one of your genuine strengths and has protected you from real harm across your life, but allowing it to soften slightly in the face of what is coming, because what is arriving has a quality of establishment to it, of being built on something solid enough that it will not require the constant vigilance that more precarious circumstances demand. I also want to speak to the Pentacle suit's connection to the earth element, to things that are grounded, enduring, and rooted. What is coming is not a windfall that will be gone as quickly as it arrives. What is coming is the beginning of something that will root and grow and that you will still be benefiting from long after the initial arrival has settled into the ordinary texture of your life. Does this feel like it is speaking to a specific area of life that has been waiting for this kind of solidity, Virgo? Whether that is financial, relational, professional, or simply the baseline security of knowing that something essential is genuinely established and genuinely yours. I want to hear what this is bringing up for you. Leave a comment below. The third card arrived in the position I read as the emotional quality of what is approaching, the interior experience of this period rather than simply its external content. And it is a card I always feel something when I turn. This card shows a seated figure with 9 cups arranged in a perfect arc behind them, a posture of genuine, uncomplicated contentment, a wish fulfilled, an arrival at the specific state of having what you actually wanted rather than simply what was available. This is not the card of someone who has made peace with receiving less than they hoped for. This is the card of someone who hoped for a specific thing and received exactly that thing and is now sitting inside the fullness of it. I want to be honest about why this card matters so much in a reading about someone who has waited a long time, because one of the quiet costs of extended waiting is a gradual downward adjustment of what we allow ourselves to want. We begin to pre-negotiate, to decide that perhaps what we hoped for was too much or too specific or not realistic given what the evidence has suggested so far. We begin to reframe our wants as optional rather than essential, to tell ourselves that we would be fine without this, that we have been fine without it, that probably we were asking for something unreasonable, and the more mature position is to release it and accept what is. That downward adjustment is what this card is specifically pushing back against today. The 9 Cups is not a card of receiving something adjacent to what you wanted or something that will require a period of convincing yourself it is enough. It is a card of receiving the actual thing, the specific thing, what you actually hoped for when you allowed yourself to hope honestly without the pre-negotiating and the reasonableness and the careful management of your own expectations. I want you to hold that possibility open fully rather than protecting yourself from it by deciding in advance that something less is more likely. I want to expand on something this card reveals about the specific interior experience of what is arriving, because I think it deserves to be named precisely. The figure on this card is not grasping at what surrounds them. They are simply inhabiting it. There is a quality of settled arrival rather than excited reaching. The difference between wanting something and being in the presence of something you already have. I am sensing this is the specific quality you are moving toward. A period where the reaching stops not because you gave up, but because you arrived. Where the effort of wanting is replaced by the easier, more spacious experience of simply having. That shift from the tension of seeking to the ease of receiving is part of what makes this particular window feel, to the people who move through it, like a dream. Because dreaming requires none of the effort of wanting. It simply gives. Inhale slowly, Virgo, because the 4th card in this spread arrived in a position that I want to give a significant amount of time to, because it speaks to you directly rather than to your circumstances. And what it says is something I think you have needed to hear for longer than this reading has been going. This card shows a figure crowned with stars pouring water between two vessels and the earth below, standing at the edge of something vast with complete, undefensive calm. This is the card of the star, associated with genuine hope rather than wishful thinking, with the specific, clear-eyed quality of faith that does not require certainty to sustain itself. With the experience of someone who has been through something genuinely difficult and has come through it with their spirit not merely intact, but somehow brighter, somehow less defended, somehow more willing to believe in good things, despite the evidence that good things do not always arrive on schedule. I am sensing this card is describing you, not who you wish you were or who you are trying to become, who you actually are right now in this specific season of your life, after everything you have been through to arrive here. There is something in you that has survived what it has survived and has not become bitter, has not become small, has not decided that the answer to being hurt by hope is to stop hoping, has continued to carry something forward quietly without demanding acknowledgement for the carrying, because something in you simply could not do otherwise. That is the star energy, and it is the specific quality in you that is part of why what is coming now, rather than to some other version of you who traveled a different path. This did not go to someone who gave up. It did not go to someone who compromised so far downward that what arrived was a shadow of what was originally sought. It went to you, to the version of you that kept the original intention intact through everything that tried to erode it. I also want to speak to the number of this card, which sits near the end of the major arcane sequence, past the difficulty and the reckoning and the radical change, arriving at the specific stillness that comes when those things have been moved through. This is not naive hope. This is seasoned hope. Hope that has been tested and has held. And that quality of seasoned, tested, held through everything hope is the specific energetic precondition for what the cards are showing arriving in your life now. I want to address something practical about what tenfold actually means in the context of this reading, because I do not want to leave that word floating without connecting it to something real. I am sensing the tenfold quality of what is coming refers not to a single thing arriving in great quantity, though there may be an element of that for some of you, but to the quality of multiplication that happens when several things align and reinforce each other simultaneously. When a financial improvement arrives in the same window as a relational improvement and an opportunity and a restoration of energy and a sense of purpose, when the sum of what arrives is genuinely greater than any of its individual parts would suggest, because the parts are supporting and amplifying each other in ways that create something that feels qualitatively different from simply receiving more of what you already had. I also want to name something about the timing of tenfold blessings specifically, because I think it matters for how you hold this reading going forward. The reason they tend to arrive in multiples is that they have been building independently along separate tracks, while the visible circumstances of daily life seemed relatively static, and then those separate tracks of accumulation arrive at their respective completion points within a close enough window that the arrivals overlap and compound. The waiting was not wasted time, it was building time. And the building has been happening in more directions simultaneously than you have had visibility into from where you have been standing. The fifth and final card in this spread appeared in the position of the invitation. What Spirit is asking you to bring with you into this arriving season, what quality or orientation is specifically being requested of you as you move toward and into what is coming. This card shows a figure stepping off a cliff with complete absence of fear, one foot extended into empty air, a small pack on their back, a white flower held lightly, eyes upward toward possibility rather than downward toward the drop. This is the energy of the genuine leap, the willingness to enter something fully rather than testing it carefully from the edge, the specific courage that is required not in the face of danger but in the face of goodness. I want to say that again because I think it is the most important thing in this reading. The courage this card is asking of you is not the courage to face something difficult. It is the courage to receive something good. Those are not the same thing. And for someone who has waited as long as you have and who has done as much careful self-protection as you have needed to do to get through this period, the second kind of courage can actually be harder to access than the first. I am sensing there may be a reflexive hesitation when the good things begin to arrive. A part of you that checks for the catch, looks for what is being missed, waits for the other shoe. That reflexive caution has served you. It has kept you safe and has kept you grounded and has prevented you from being naive in situations where naivety would have cost you something real. But I want you to be aware of it when it activates in the face of what is coming, so that you can notice it and choose consciously to step forward anyway, not past it, not by suppressing it, simply with it present and forward anyway. The figure on this card does not look down, not because the drop is not there, but because what is above and ahead is genuinely worth the orientation. I am asking you to practice that same upward gaze, to let yourself look forward at what is arriving rather than scanning for all the ways it might not be exactly what it appears. To allow the waiting and the work and the holding of your original intention through everything that tried to erode it to finally completely pay off. As I bring this reading toward its close, I want to leave you with the complete picture the cards assembled for you today. Something of genuine, structural, lasting significance is arriving in your life. It has been building toward this specific window for longer than you have had visibility into its approach. It is going to feel, when it arrives, exactly like what you actually wanted rather than a reasonable approximation of it. It is going to compound and multiply across different areas of your life in ways that create a sum greater than any individual part. And it is asking you, as it arrives, to receive it with open hands rather than braced ones. The waiting is ending, Virgo. Not the ordinary kind of waiting that simply runs out. The kind that was actually necessary, that was building something essential while it appeared to be producing nothing, that was taking the long way around because the long way around was the only way that led to exactly here. You are exactly here. And what is coming next is going to feel like the dream you stopped letting yourself dream with full commitment because it had already taken this long. Let yourself dream it again fully, because this time it is arriving. If this reading reached something in you that has needed to hear it for a long time, please share it with a Virgo who is still in the middle of the waiting and needs to know it is not for nothing, and leave a comment. I want to know what you have been holding on to, what you have been building toward, what this reading landed on for you specifically. I read every single one, and I hold what you share here with genuine care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, you have waited, you have worked, you have kept the original intention intact through everything that tried to reduce it. Now receive all of it tenfold.